In this example, we're going to be looking at how we can manipulate the DOM. The DOM stands for Document Object Model. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using a function that will change the background color of a web page when a button is clicked. Here is the HTML that I'm starting with, and as you can see, it's very simple. This is what the rendered page looks like in the browser. Let's go ahead and create the JavaScript that we'll need in order to make this happen. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to assign an ID to my button so that I can target it using JavaScript. We'll be giving this button an ID of color change. Now that I have that, I can go ahead and I can use my document.getElementById, and I'm going to go ahead and target my color change. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add an event listener. An event listener is a method in JavaScript that waits for a specific event to occur, and then it's going to execute a function in response. Events can include things like clicking a button, which is what we're going to be using, or scrolling a page, or submitting a form. When you attach an event listener to an element, you're essentially telling the browser to listen for that event to occur on that specific element, and then you want to execute the specified function when that happens. This allows you to create interactive web pages where certain actions trigger specific behaviors. In JavaScript, we can use the addEventListener method to attach an event listener to an element. The event listener method takes two arguments. The first one is the type of event to listen for. This would be something like a click or a scroll, and then the function to execute when the event occurs. So what we're going to do is we're going to, in parentheses following the event listener, we're going to specify that we want this event to be triggered by a click. Then once the click has been registered, we're going to run a function. We'll just use an anonymous function for this example, so I'm just going to go ahead and specify function. I'll open and close my parentheses, and then I'll open and close my curly braces. Inside the curly braces, we're going to place all of the instructions that we want to have happen when the button is clicked. So something very simple would just be to log to the console. And now if we go ahead and save, and we refresh the page and open our console, you'll see when I click the button, our message is going to show in the console. So you can see this is a very simple example of how we can attach an event listener to our button, and then when the user interacts with the page, we're able to make some sort of change occur on the page. In this case, we're just logging to the console. But what we ultimately want to do is we want to make changes to the page itself. So I'm going to use my document.body.style.background color, and then I'm going to make this equal to something. And the thing that I'm going to make it equal to is we're going to make a function called random color. And when the button is clicked, we're going to want to go ahead and run this function, and it's going to affect the background color of our body element. Now that I have this in place, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write the random color function. So we'll come down below, we'll make a function called random color, and I'm going to create a couple of variables. The first one is going to be characters, and I'm going to make this equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'll also include A, B, C, D, E, F. And this will allow me to create a hex value using these characters. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another variable. We'll call this one color. I'm going to make this equal to a hash. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a for loop. Now we haven't really worked with loops yet, but loops are an important part of JavaScript. And what happens when you use a loop is it allows the script to continually cycle through whatever sorts of instructions, and in this case we're going to be passing on a specific condition. So let's go ahead and let me show you what this looks like, and we'll break it down as we write it. A for loop is a control flow statement in JavaScript that allows you to execute a block of code repeatedly for a fixed number of times, or until a specified condition is met. The for loop is commonly used for iterating over arrays, performing arithmetic operations, or executing code a certain number of times. So the basic syntax for a for loop is we put for, and then in the parentheses, we're going to pass in 3 arguments: initialization, condition, and increment decrement. And we're going to open up the curly braces, and then we'll place the code to be executed inside. For our initialization statement, we're going to write let I equal 0. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a semicolon. The initialization statement is executed once at the beginning of the loop, and it initializes a counter variable. It's used to keep track of the loop's progress. This statement is typically used to declare and initialize a loop counter variable, such as what we have right here. The next part of the for loop is the condition. The condition statement is evaluated before each iteration of the loop. If the condition is true, the loop is going to continue, and if it is false, the loop will end. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put I less than 6. This will ensure that our loop is going to run through 6 times, and then once that counter has met 6, it will stop running. Finally, we're going to write I++. This is the increment decrement statement, and it's executed at the end of each iteration of the loop, and it updates the counter variable. This statement typically is used to increment or decrement the loop counter, and so you will often see it as I++, which is shorthand for I equals I plus 1. And then we have the code to be executed, which goes inside the curly braces. What we're going to place inside of ours is going to be color plus equals characters, and then inside of square braces, I'm going to pass in math.floor, and then in parentheses, we'll put math.random, and then we'll multiply that by 16. What this expression means is it's going to generate a random integer between 0 and 15 using the math.random method. The math.floor method is going to round the results to the nearest integer, which ensures that the index of the characters array is an integers. This portion of the code right here is going to select a random character from our characters array and use the random integer generated in this previous step that we just talked about. The color plus equal is shorthand notation that's going to append the selected character to the color variable. And then finally, the last thing that we need to do is we need to return color. And so I'm going to put that outside of the for loop curly brace. And this line is going to return the final hex value code string that's generated by the loop. So altogether, these lines of code are going to generate a random hexadecimal color code with 6 characters. It's going to exclude the hash symbol at the beginning. So this loop selects a random character from the characters array 6 times, and it will concatenate them into a single string, which is going to be returned as our final hex color code. Let's save this and let's go ahead and run our page. If we click the button, you can see how the background color has now changed. And if we click this again, it's going to change to a different color. We could also go ahead and add a console.log and log the value of color so that you can see the hex values that are being generated. It's important that we add this before the return, as return will stop our program from running. So let's go ahead and save this. We'll refresh in the browser. And now if we click, you can see that the hex value is going to show up in the console. And every time we click the button, it's going to generate a new hex value for us. So as you can see, I'm using various methods of manipulating the DOM, and I'm actually changing the way that the page looks. We're controlling this or initiating the change based on the user clicking our button. So in this example, we've modified the DOM, and we've also learned about event listeners, and we've been introduced to the for loop, which is a common technique that you'll often use in JavaScript.